Chapter 1, First Bloom. Noah stepped out of the transport shuttle, the recycled air of the human outpost giving way to the fragrant breath of Alizia. He inhaled deeply, the center symphony of unknown flora, sweet and subtly electric. Before him stretched a landscape that defied terrestrial description. Giant, iridescent ferns unfurled towards a sky painted in hues of lavender and rose, their fronds edged with a gentle bioluminescence. Buildings, seemingly grown rather than constructed, spiraled upwards, their surfaces shimmering with integrated organic light. This was Alizia, a living testament to biotechnology beyond human comprehension. "Welcome, Dr. Thorne." A melodious voice broke his reverie. Turning, Noah saw her, Rhea. Her lithe form was clad in a simple, flowing garment that shimmered like polished jade. Her skin, a delicate shade of violet, pulsed with intricate bioluminescent patterns that shifted and flowed like living constellations. He'd seen holo images, of course, but they hadn't captured the ethereal quality of her presence. "It's breathtaking," Noah stammered, momentarily forgetting protocol. He extended a hand, a gesture he hoped translated across the cultural divide. Rhea hesitated for a fraction of a second, her bioluminescence flickering a curious blue, before mirroring his gesture. Her touch was surprisingly warm, a current of energy seeming to pass between them. "Alizia welcomes you, Dr. Thorne. I am Rhea, your liaison." The next few days were a whirlwind of introductions, tours, and scientific briefings. Noah, usually eloquent, found himself constantly struggling to articulate his awe and the barrage of questions that flooded his mind. Rhea, while outwardly polite, seemed to hold a certain reservation, her bioluminescence occasionally flashing a cool, analytical green. He sensed a subtle detachment in her, a prioritization of logic over emotion that seemed to permeate Elysian culture. During a tour of a biodome dedicated to atmospheric regulation, Noah commented on the intricate symbiotic relationship between the glowing flora and the air-purifying fauna. "It's incredible how you've achieved such perfect balance," he said, genuinely impressed. "Balance is not achieved, Dr. Thorne," Rhea corrected, her voice even. "It is maintained. It is a constant process of adjustment and intervention." Her luminescence shimmered a clinical white, a stark contrast to the vibrant hues of the surrounding ecosystem. "We do not simply observe and admire life as you humans seem to. We shape it, refine it, ensure its optimal function." Noah sensed a slight criticism in her tone. "We're learning," he countered, "we respect life, but we also believe in letting it find its own path, within certain parameters." Their debate continued throughout the week, sparking a subtle tension between them, but also a grudging respect. Noah's human pragmatism and Rhea's Elysian precision clashed, yet their shared fascination with the intricate workings of life created a bridge. Then, during a routine scan of the planetary ecosystem, a small anomaly appeared in a remote, mountainous region. A patch of unusual fungal growth, initially dismissed as a minor aberration. "Interesting," Noah murmured, studying the data displayed on the screen. The fungal pattern was unlike anything he'd seen on Alizia, its growth unusually aggressive. Rhea leaned closer, her scent, a subtle blend of floral and ozone, momentarily distracting him. Her luminescence pulsed a concerned amber. "It is unexpected," she admitted, her usual composure momentarily faltering. Neither of them could have guessed that this seemingly insignificant blip was the first bloom of the blight, a threat that would test their cooperation, challenge their beliefs, and ignite a spark between them more potent than any bioluminescent display. Chapter 2, Symbiotic Embrace. The next morning, Noah found himself drawn to the bioluminescent garden surrounding the human outpost. The alien flora pulsed with a gentle light, a rhythmic breath of vibrant colors. He was attempting to sketch the complex patterns of a vine-like plant, its leaves unfolding and retracting like miniature, jeweled hands, when Rhea appeared. "Its cellular structure is fascinating," Noah commented without looking up, "the way it absorbs and refracts light. I've never seen anything like it." Rhea stood beside him, her silence more presence than absence. Finally, she spoke, her voice soft. "This particular species communicates through bioluminescent variations. It is expressing curiosity." Noah looked up, surprised. "Curiosity?" About me? Rhea's luminescence shifted to a soft pink, a hue Noah was beginning to associate with amusement. Perhaps. It senses your different energy. He chuckled, setting aside his sketchpad. Different? I suppose I am. The conversation shifted from the flora to the spreading anomaly. Rhea seemed troubled, a usual scientific detachment giving way to a palpable concern. Its growth rate is exponential, she admitted, far exceeding anything we've observed in natural fungal propagation. They spent the next few days immersed in collaborative research, their initial friction smoothing into a shared quest for understanding. Noah's pragmatic approach, focusing on identifying the blight's weaknesses, complemented Rhea's deep understanding of the Elysian ecosystem. He was struck by her intuitive grasp of the intricate web of life that connected every organism on Elysia. One evening, while analyzing data from the infected zone, Rhea's luminescence flashed a brilliant, almost painful violet. It's communicating, she whispered, her voice strained. The blight, it's sending out signals. Noah looked at her, startled. Signals? What kind of signals? Complex bioluminescent patterns. Not unlike the flora, yet different. Darker. Almost predatory. Noah felt a chill run down his spine. A sentient plague. The implication was staggering. He looked at Rhea, her usual vibrant glow dimmed, her violet skin almost ashen. He felt a sudden urge to comfort her, a protective instinct he hadn't realized he possessed. We'll figure it out, he said, his voice firm, reaching out to gently touch her arm. Her skin felt cool, almost fragile. Her luminescence pulsed a faint blue, a flicker of hope in the encroaching darkness. The touch lingered for a moment, a silent acknowledgement of the Chapter 2, Symbiotic Embrace. The next morning, Noah found himself drawn to the bioluminescent garden surrounding the human outpost. The alien flora pulsed with a gentle light, a rhythmic breath of vibrant colors. He was attempting to sketch the complex patterns of a vine-like plant, its leaves unfolding and retracting like miniature, jeweled hands, when Rhea appeared. Its cellular structure is fascinating, Noah commented without looking up, the way it absorbs and refracts light. I've never seen anything like it. Rhea stood beside him, her silence more presence than absence. Finally, she spoke, her voice soft. This particular species communicates through bioluminescent variations. It is expressing Chapter 2, Symbiotic Embrace. The next morning, Noah found himself drawn to the bioluminescent garden surrounding the human outpost. The alien flora pulsed with a gentle light, a rhythmic breath of vibrant colors. He was attempting to sketch the complex patterns of a vine-like plant, its leaves unfolding and retracting like miniature, jeweled hands, when Rhea appeared. Its cellular structure is fascinating, Noah commented without looking up, the way it absorbs and refracts light. I've never seen anything like it. Rhea stood beside him, her silence more presence than absence. Finally, she spoke, her voice soft. This particular species communicates through bioluminescent variations. And then, he saw the gaps, the places where the blight had severed those connections, leaving behind a void of darkness. He looked at Rhea, a new understanding dawning in his eyes. Her insight, born from her deep connection to Elysia, was the key. He felt a surge of admiration, of something more. He reached for her hand, his fingers gently tracing the bioluminescent patterns on her skin. You're brilliant, he whispered. This time, she didn't pull away. Her luminescence flared a vibrant, hopeful green, a shared understanding passing between them, a symbiotic embrace in the face of a growing darkness. The threat of the blight loomed large, but in that shared moment of connection, they found a strength, a hope, that went beyond science, beyond logic. It was a spark, a first bloom of something new, something precious, in the heart of a dying world. Chapter 3, The Whispers of Decay. A chilling broadcast crackled across every screen in the human outpost and throughout Elysia. A distorted voice, filtered through a chorus of clicking and rustling sounds, spoke in Elysian, a language Noah was slowly beginning to grasp. The harmony is a lie, the voice rasped, its words laced with a venomous intensity. Balance is stagnation. Elysia must be reborn. Rhea translated, her luminescence flickering a sickly yellow. They call themselves the cultivators, she explained, her voice tight with anger. They believe our ecosystem has become too predictable. They seek to introduce chaos, to force evolution through destruction. The cultivators. The rogue faction responsible for the blight. Their manifesto continued, a twisted ideology that revered entropy and saw the blight not as a plague, but as a catalyst for change. Their words sent a wave of fear and outrage through Alizia, a society built on the principles of harmony and balance. Noah watched Rhea, her normally vibrant luminescence dimmed, her violet skin almost grey. He saw not just scientific concern, but a deep, personal grief. This attack wasn't just against Alizia's ecosystem, it was against everything she believed in. He reached for her hand, his touch a silent offering of comfort. This time, her fingers intertwined with his, her skin radiating a faint warmth, a flicker of solace in the encroaching darkness. Their methods are insane, she murmured, her voice trembling. They don't understand, they don't see the beauty in the balance. They're blinded by their ideology, Noah agreed, squeezing her hand gently. But we can stop them. We have to. The cultivators' broadcast had provided a crucial piece of the puzzle. Their warped philosophy hinted at the blight's underlying mechanism, a deliberate disruption of the symbiotic relationships that sustained Alizia. They're not just destroying, Noah realized, studying the latest data on the blight spread, they're twisting, perverting the existing connections. Look at this. He pointed to the complex bioluminescent patterns emitted by the blight, now slightly different in the newly infected zones. They're mimicking the communication signals of the symbiotic flora, but they're subtly altered, sending conflicting instructions. It's like introducing static into a finely tuned orchestra. Rhea's luminescence pulsed with a mix of horror and understanding. They're turning the ecosystem against itself, she whispered. Using its own language to sow chaos. Noah's human perspective, unburdened by Elysian dogma, allowed him to see the blight strategy with a chilling clarity. It's like a computer virus, he explained, corrupting the code, turning beneficial functions into destructive ones. Rhea, however, possessed an intimate knowledge of that code, of the intricate language of Elysian life. She began to see patterns within the blight's distorted signals, whispers of the original symbiotic communications beneath the layers of corruption. Their collaboration intensified, fueled by a shared sense of urgency and a growing emotional connection. They worked late into the night, analyzing data, debating theories, their hands often brushing, their fingers lingering a moment longer than necessary. The air between them crackled with an unspoken tension, a mix of fear, determination, and a burgeoning attraction that neither of them acknowledged, yet neither could deny. One evening, as they were poring over the blight's communication patterns, Noah noticed Rhea's luminescence pulsing a deep, almost sorrowful blue. He paused, concerned. "Rhea, are you all right?" She looked up, her eyes filled with a sadness he hadn't seen before. "The cultivators?" "I knew some of them," she whispered, her voice barely audible. Before they embraced this madness." He saw a flicker of the cool, analytical scientist he had met upon arrival, but it was quickly replaced by a raw vulnerability that made his heart ache. He reached across the table and gently took her hand. "They've made a terrible mistake," he said softly, his thumb stroking the back of her hand. "But we can fix it. Together." Her luminescence shimmered, the sorrowful blue fading into a soft violet. She looked at him, her eyes searching his. "Thank you, Noah," she whispered, her voice regaining a flicker of its usual strength. The use of his name, spoken with such quiet intimacy, resonated through him, a subtle shift in their dynamic, a whisper of something more than professional respect. He felt a warmth spread through his chest, a feeling that had nothing to do with science and everything to do with the woman whose hand he held in his. The threat of the blight remained, a dark cloud hanging over Alizia. But in the shared intimacy of that moment, in the face of a dying world, a new seed of hope began to bloom, a delicate blossom of connection between two souls from different worlds, drawn together by a shared purpose and a growing, undeniable attraction. Chapter 4, Fungal Fortress. "It's like stepping into another world," Noah murmured, his voice muffled by the respirator. The air shimmered with floating spores, casting an eerie, phosphorescent glow on the towering fungal structures that had overtaken the once vibrant landscape. This was the heart of the blight-infected zone, a place where the familiar beauty of Alysia had been twisted into something alien and menacing. Rhea, her luminescence dimmed but still visible through her protective suit, nodded grimly. "It feels wrong," she whispered, her voice tinged with a sorrow that resonated with Noah. The mission was crucial: gather samples from the blight's core to analyze its evolving structure and communication patterns. But for Rhea, it was also a pilgrimage into a desecrated sanctuary. They moved cautiously through the fungal forest, the ground soft and yielding beneath their boots. The air was heavy with the smell of decay, a stark contrast to the sweet fragrance Noah remembered from his first days on Alysia. Towering fungal spires pulsed with a sickly green light, casting long, distorted shadows. "The growth rate is incredible," Noah observed, pointing to a spire that seemed to have doubled in size since their last aerial scan. "It's almost as if it's anticipating us." Rhea's luminescence flickered anxiously. "It's adapting," she said, her voice tense. "Learning." Suddenly, the ground beneath them trembled. A fungal wall erupted from the earth, blocking their path. The spires around them pulsed brighter, their eerie green light intensifying. "It's hurting us," Noah realized, grabbing Rhea's hand. "We need to move." They ran, the ground shaking beneath their feet as more fungal structures sprang from the earth, forming a labyrinth of pulsating walls. The air thickened with spores, making it difficult to breathe. Noah felt a surge of adrenaline, mixed with a primal fear he hadn't experienced since his early field expeditions on hostile terrestrial planets. They reached a dead end, a towering fungal wall blocking their escape. The spires around them pulsed in a rhythmic pattern, a silent, menacing communication. Noah felt a sense of dread. They were trapped. "We can't go back," Rhea said, her voice strained, her luminescence pulsing a frantic violet. "It's sealing the path behind us." Noah looked around, his mind racing. "Up," he said, pointing to a network of thick fungal vines that snaked their way up the towering wall. "We can climb." He tested the vines, surprised by their strength. He started to climb, pulling Rhea up after him. The vines pulsed with a faint, unsettling warmth. He could feel the blight's presence, a silent, watchful intelligence. They reached the top of the wall, panting and covered in spores. The view was breathtaking and terrifying. The entire valley had been transformed into a fungal fortress, a pulsating, living maze designed to trap and consume. They collected their samples, the fungal flesh surprisingly resilient, almost metallic to the touch. Then, they began their descent, rappelling down the opposite side of the wall using a biocable Noah had brought. As they reached the ground, a section of the wall collapsed behind them, sealing off their escape route. The blight was learning, adapting, its intelligence growing with every passing moment. They continued to navigate the fungal labyrinth, their escape becoming increasingly desperate. They faced collapsing tunnels, spore clouds that disoriented their senses, and fungal tendrils that lashed out like whips. Noah's human ingenuity, his ability to improvise and adapt, proved crucial. He used his bioscanner to identify weak points in the fungal structures, creating temporary escape routes. Rhea's deep understanding of Elysian biology helped them predict the blight's movements, anticipating its traps. During one close call, a fungal tendril snagged Rhea's leg, pulling her back. Noah reacted instantly, severing the tendril with his laser cutter. He pulled her close, checking for injuries. Their eyes met, their breaths mingling through their respirators. In that moment, amidst the chaos and fear, Noah felt a surge of protectiveness, a wave of tenderness that surprised him with its intensity. "Are you all right?" he asked, his voice laced with concern. Rhea's luminescence pulsed a faint, reassuring green. "I'm fine," she whispered, her voice trembling slightly. He held her gaze for a moment longer than necessary, then helped her to her feet. The unspoken connection between them, forged in the crucible of shared danger, had deepened, intensified. Finally, exhausted and covered in spores, they reached the edge of the infected zone. They collapsed onto the uninfected ground, their respirators hissing, the sweet, clean air of Alasea filling their lungs like a balm. They had survived. They had their samples. And they had something more, a bond forged in the heart of the fungal fortress, a shared experience that had brought them closer than they could have ever imagined. As they looked at each other, their faces smudged with spores, their luminescence flickering with a mixture of relief and exhaustion, they knew that something profound had shifted between them. The threat of the blight remained, a dark cloud hanging over Alasea. But in the shared intimacy of their ordeal, in the heart of a dying world, a new seed of hope had taken root, a fragile blossom of connection that defied the encroaching darkness. Chapter 5, Seeds of Hope. Back at the research outpost, the sterile white walls felt both a sanctuary and a cage. Noah stripped off his contaminated suit, the scent of Elysian decay clinging stubbornly to his skin. He showered, scrubbing until his skin was raw, yet he couldn't shake the feeling of the blight's presence, the memory of its pulsating, malevolent intelligence. Rhea emerged from the decontamination chamber, her violet skin pale, her bioluminescence subdued. The experience had taken a toll on her, the violation of her world evident in the muted flicker of her light. "The preliminary analysis is disturbing," she said, her voice quiet, handing Noah a datapad. "The blight is evolving faster than we anticipated. It's incorporating elements of the Elysian ecosystem into its own structure, becoming more resilient, more adaptable." Noah scanned the data, his brow furrowing. The blight wasn't just consuming Alasea, it was learning from it, integrating its strengths, turning its defenses against itself. "It's like a parasitic mimic," he murmured, absorbing its host's knowledge, its power. "We need to act quickly," Rhea said, her luminescence pulsing a determined blue. "If it continues at this rate, even if we find a counteragent, it may be too late to save what remains." The weight of responsibility pressed down on Noah. He felt a surge of protectiveness towards Rhea, towards Alasea itself. This beautiful, vibrant world, so full of life and wonder, was on the brink of collapse. He had to do something, anything, to stop it. "I have an idea," he said, a spark of inspiration igniting in his mind. "Something radical." He explained his concept, drawing diagrams on the datapad, a fusion of human gene silencing technology with Rhea's knowledge of Elysian symbiotic pathways. The idea was to create a targeted counteragent that wouldn't just destroy the blight, but would sever its connection to the Elysian ecosystem, starving it of the energy it needed to thrive. Rhea listened intently, her luminescence shifting through a spectrum of colors, reflecting her thoughts. "It's unconventional," she finally said, her voice laced with a mixture of apprehension and excitement. "Our biotech focuses on enhancing symbiotic relationships, not severing them. It's a delicate balance. Disrupting it could have unforeseen consequences." Noah understood her hesitation. His idea was a gamble, a high-stakes intervention that could backfire catastrophically. "But it's our best chance," he argued, his voice firm. "The blight is exploiting that balance, twisting it for its own destructive purposes. We need to fight fire with fire." He saw a flicker of admiration in Rhea's eyes, a spark of respect for his willingness to challenge conventional wisdom. "Very well," she said, a luminescence settling into a resolute green. "Let's do it." They worked tirelessly for the next few days, fueled by adrenaline and a shared sense of purpose. Noah's human pragmatism and Rhea's deep understanding of Elysian biology fused into a powerful synergy. They argued, debated, challenged each other's assumptions, yet they did so with a mutual respect that bordered on something deeper. The air between them crackled with an unspoken tension, a mixture of scientific excitement and a burgeoning attraction that neither of them acknowledged, yet neither could deny. One evening, while synthesizing a crucial component of the counteragent, Rhea paused, her luminescence dimming to a worried amber. "The Elysian Council is resistant," she confessed, her voice tinged with frustration. "They view our methods with suspicion. They believe interfering with the ecosystem, even to save it, is unnatural." Noah felt a surge of anger. Their bureaucratic caution was endangering Alasea's future. "They're clinging to outdated dogma while their world is dying around them," he said, his voice tight with frustration. He saw a flash of pain in Rhea's eyes. "They fear the unknown, Noah," she said softly, placing a hand on his arm. Change is frightening, even when it's necessary. Her touch sent a wave of warmth through him, a calming influence that soothed his anger. He looked at her, her luminescent pattern swirling like miniature galaxies on her violet skin. He saw her not just as a scientist, but as a woman caught between two worlds, torn between loyalty to her people and her desperate desire to save them. He covered her hand with his thumb gently stroking her skin. "We'll convince them," he said, his voice regaining its strength. "We have to." Their first test of the counteragent was a success. In a controlled environment, the modified symbiotic pathways disrupted the blight's growth, effectively starving it of its energy source. The result wasn't immediate, but it was undeniable. The pulsating, aggressive fungal growth slowed, then ceased, the sickly green luminescence fading to a dull gray. They presented their findings to the Elysian Council, the data undeniable, the potential for salvation clear. Yet, the Council remained hesitant, their faces etched with doubt. Noah, frustrated by their inaction, was about to launch into another impassioned plea when Rhea spoke. "This is not just a scientific endeavor," she said, her voice calm but firm, her luminescence pulsing with a passionate violet. "This is about our home, our future. The blight is not just a threat to our ecosystem, it's a threat to our very essence, to the harmony that defines us." Her words resonated with the Council, their scientific detachment giving way to a flicker of hope. They agreed to a limited field trial of the counteragent, a small step towards a possible future. As they left the council chamber, Rhea turned to Noah, her luminescence radiating a grateful blue. "Thank you, Noah," she whispered. "You gave them hope." He smiled, a genuine, heartfelt smile that reached his eyes. "We did it together, Rhea," he said, his voice filled with a warmth that had nothing to do with science and everything to do with the woman beside him. He reached for her hand, their fingers intertwining, their touch a silent acknowledgement of the bond that had grown between them, a shared hope that bloomed in the heart of a dying world. The fight was far from over, the future uncertain. But in that shared moment of connection, they found a strength, a resilience, that went beyond science, beyond logic, a seed of hope that promised a new beginning, a new bloom, in the face of the encroaching darkness. Chapter 6, The Elysian Crucible. The deployment of the counteragent was a breathtaking spectacle. From the human outpost, Noah and Rhea watched as airborne Elysian seed pods, modified to carry the counteragent, burst open over the infected zones, releasing a shimmering, golden rain. The effect wasn't immediate. The blight, a sentient entity, fought back, its fungal structures pulsing with a defiant, crimson light. For days, Elysia hung in the balance, a battlefield between life and decay. The golden rain and the crimson glow clashed, a silent, desperate struggle for dominance. Then, slowly, almost imperceptibly, the crimson began to fade. The blight's aggressive growth stalled, its tendrils retracting, its pulsating light dimming. Hope, fragile but tangible, began to spread through the research outpost, through Elysia itself. But the cultivators, the architects of the blight, hadn't surrendered. They retaliated, not with a renewed offensive, but with a desperate act of sabotage. They targeted Elysia's core network, the intricate bioengineered system that regulated the planet's atmosphere, temperature, and energy flow. Their aim wasn't just to destroy, but to destabilize, to throw Elysia into chaos, hoping to create an environment where the blight could flourish once more. "They're insane!" Noah exclaimed, watching the alarms flashing across the main console, the vital signs of Elysia flickering erratically. "They're willing to sacrifice their entire planet for their twisted ideology." Rhea's luminescence pulsed a furious violet, her violet skin almost black. "They believe they are purging Elysia, preparing it for rebirth," she said, her voice tight with anger and grief. "But they are blind to the beauty they destroy." The sabotage plunged Elysia into turmoil. The air grew thin in some areas, thick and toxic in others. The temperature fluctuated wildly, causing widespread ecological stress. The planet's bioluminescent glow dimmed, as if Elysia itself was holding its breath, bracing for the final blow. Noah and Rhea worked feverishly, coordinating with the Elysian authorities to stabilize the core network. Noah's outside-the-box thinking, his understanding of human systems engineering, proved invaluable. He saw patterns in the cultivators' sabotage that the Elysians, blinded by their intimate knowledge of their own systems, had missed. Rhea, with her deep connection to Alizia, guided his interventions, ensuring they resonated with the planet's delicate balance. During a brief respite, exhausted but resolute, they found themselves alone in a small observation dome overlooking the troubled landscape. The once vibrant bioluminescent gardens below were dimmed, their light flickering uncertainly. "It's heartbreaking," Rhea whispered, her voice choked with emotion. "To see Alizia like this." Noah reached for her hand, his touch a silent offering of comfort. "We'll fix it," he said, his voice firm, his thumb gently stroking her skin. "Together." She looked at him, her luminescence pulsing a faint, hopeful blue. I don't know if I can bear to lose it, Noah," she whispered, her voice barely audible, using his name with an intimacy that sent a wave of warmth through him. He pulled her closer, their bodies touching, their breaths mingling. He felt a surge of protectiveness, a longing to shield her from the pain, from the fear. "You won't lose it," he whispered, his lips brushing against her forehead. "I won't let you." The moment hung between them, charged with an unspoken emotion that transcended their scientific collaboration, their shared mission. It was a moment of connection, of solace, in the heart of a dying world. The final confrontation with the cultivators wasn't a grand battle, but a desperate race against time. They had traced the source of the sabotage to a hidden underground facility, where a small group of cultivators was attempting to unleash a final, devastating wave of disruption. Noah and Rhea led a joint human-Elysian team into the facility, their mission not to fight, but to disable. They navigated the labyrinthine corridors, the air thick with the smell of decay and the faint hum of the sabotage devices. They found the cultivators huddled around a central console, their faces illuminated by the flickering screens, their eyes filled with a fanatic gleam. They were prepared to die for their cause, to see Alizia consumed by chaos. Rhea stepped forward, her luminescence pulsing a vibrant, defiant violet. "Stop this madness," she pleaded, her voice resonating with a mixture of anger and sorrow. "You're destroying everything we hold dear." The cultivators remained unmoved, their leader, a gaunt, grey-skinned Elysian with eyes that burned with a feverish intensity, simply smiled. "Alizia must be reborn," he rasped, his voice filled with a chilling conviction. "From the ashes of the old, a new order will rise." Noah, seeing the futility of reason, acted. He unleashed a concentrated pulse of EMP, disabling the sabotage devices and plunging the facility into darkness. The cultivators were apprehended, their reign of terror finally at an end. The battle for Alizia was over, but the war wasn't won. The planet was wounded, its delicate ecosystem scarred. The blight had been contained, but its spores remained, a latent threat that could resurface at any time. The cultivators had been defeated, but their ideology, their twisted vision of a reborn Alizia, lingered in the shadows. As they emerged from the facility, the first rays of dawn painting the ravaged landscape in hues of lavender and rose, Noah and Rhea looked at each other, their faces etched with exhaustion, but their eyes filled with a shared sense of purpose, a quiet understanding that their journey had just begun. The future of Alizia remained uncertain, the cost of their victory heavy. But in their shared struggle, in the heart of a wounded world, they had found something precious, something enduring, a connection that transcended species, a love that bloomed in the crucible of despair, a hope that whispered of a new beginning, a new Elysian bloom. Chapter 7, Rebirth. The weeks that followed were a blur of rebuilding and recovery. The Elysian seed pods, now carrying restorative enzymes, were deployed across the planet, repairing the damaged ecosystem, coaxing the dormant life back into vibrant bloom. The air cleared, the bioluminescent gardens pulsed with renewed vigor, and the lavender and rose hues returned to the Elysian sky. But the scars remained, a stark reminder of the blight's touch, of the cultivator's madness. Noah and Rhea found themselves working side by side, coordinating the recovery efforts. The shared struggle had forged a deep connection between them, a quiet understanding that went beyond words. They no longer debated scientific theories with the same intellectual sparring, instead, they worked with a seamless synergy, their strengths complementing each other, their shared passion for Alizia's future guiding their actions. One evening, they stood on the balcony of the human outpost, overlooking the recovering landscape. The air was filled with the sweet fragrance of the resurgent flora, a stark contrast to the acrid smell of decay that had lingered for so long. "It's beautiful," Rhea whispered, her voice filled with a quiet awe. Her luminescence pulsed a soft, vibrant green, reflecting the renewed life around them. Noah reached for her hand, his fingers gently tracing the intricate bioluminescent patterns on her skin. "You saved your world, Rhea," he said, his voice filled with admiration. She turned to him, her eyes shimmering with unshed tears. "We saved it, Noah," she corrected, her voice barely a whisper. "Together." He saw a vulnerability in her eyes, a raw emotion that made his heart ache. He pulled her close, his arms wrapping around her, his cheek resting against her forehead. He felt her body tremble against his, her warmth seeping into him, a silent language that spoke volumes. The embrace lingered, a moment suspended in time, a quiet acknowledgement of the bond that had grown between them amidst the chaos and despair. It wasn't a passionate embrace, but a comforting one, a shared moment of solace and gratitude. As the weeks turned into months, Alysia slowly healed. The blight was contained, its spores carefully monitored. The cultivators, imprisoned, had become withdrawn, their fanaticism replaced by a quiet despair. They had failed to reshape Alysia in their image, their vision of a chaotic rebirth replaced by the resilient power of the existing ecosystem. Their motivation, Noah realized, hadn't been simply destruction, but a desperate, misguided attempt to reconnect with a world they felt had become too ordered, too predictable. They had sought to shake Alysia awake, to remind it of its wild heart, but their methods had been tragically flawed. Noah's mission on Alysia was coming to an end. The human outpost was being decommissioned, its purpose served. He stood in Rhea's lab, packing his personal belongings, a sense of melancholy settling over him. He had come to Alysia seeking knowledge, seeking to understand its unique biosphere. He had found something far more profound, a connection to another world, to another being, that had changed him in ways he hadn't anticipated. Rhea stood beside him, her luminescence pulsing a soft, uncertain blue. "You're leaving," she stated, more than asked. He nodded, unable to meet her gaze. "My work here is done." A silence hung between them, heavy with unspoken emotions. Finally, Rhea spoke, her voice barely a whisper. "Will you return?" He turned to her, his eyes searching hers. He saw a flicker of hope in her gaze, a vulnerability that made his heart ache. He wanted to promise her he would return, to promise her a future together. But he couldn't. The distance between their worlds, both physical and cultural, remained a formidable barrier. "I don't know, Rhea," he said honestly, his voice tinged with regret. "But I won't forget you. Or Alysia." He reached for her hand, his fingers gently tracing the bioluminescent patterns on her skin, memorizing their intricate beauty. Their touch lingered, a silent farewell, a bittersweet acknowledgement of a connection that might never fully bloom. He stepped onto the transport shuttle, the fragrant breath of Alysia filling his lungs one last time. As the shuttle lifted off, he looked back at the receding landscape, at the shimmering, vibrant world he was leaving behind. He saw Rhea standing on the balcony of the research outpost, her luminescence a solitary beacon of light in the gathering dusk. He felt a pang of loss, a sense of incompleteness. He had saved a world, but he had also lost a piece of his heart. As Alysia shrunk to a distant point of light, Noah knew that his life would never be the same. He carried with him the memories of a dying world reborn, of a love that bloomed amidst the ashes, a fragile, enduring hope for a future where two different worlds, two different species, could find a way to connect, to understand, to love. The Elysian bloom, a testament to the resilience of life, would forever be etched in his memory, a reminder of the power of connection, the enduring strength of hope, and the bittersweet beauty of a love that might never fully be realized.